Have you ever noticed something? Many people know exactly how to behave at their job. They show up for their work shift and they actually show up on time. And if for some reason they are actually going to be late, they give their boss the common courtesy of a phone call, letting them know that they will be late for their work shift. They communicate very effectively with their boss and coworkers. They answer emails extremely courteously. They return phone calls very promptly. They work together as a team. In fact, they are team players. They know how to say, "I'm sorry," when they make mistakes. They understand accountability. And most importantly, they understand consequences. But then many of those same people go home and become completely different human beings. Folks, as I just recently began my own transition back into the workforce full time after a year and a half hiatus due to some serious health challenges, it got me to some thinking. What if we evaluated our own performance in our relationships the same way we evaluated our performance in the workplace? Because if we did, a lot of our relationships would be under review in the Human Resources Office. Some of us would receive a verbal warning. Some of us would receive a written warning. Some of us would be out our final warning. And some of us would simply be terminated. You're fired. I am not talking about treating people like employees. I am talking about expecting the same level of emotional maturity, accountability, and respect from the people closest to us that we expect from complete strangers at work. Because this is what I have learned. Most adults know how to function professionally. The question is, can those same adults function relationally in their personal lives? Here is another thing that I've learned along my life journey. Not everyone has emotional intelligence. Let me say that again. Not every adult has emotional intelligence. People can have educational degrees. In fact, they can have more degrees than a thermometer. People can have careers, great upwardly mobile careers. People can pay bills, such as rent, mortgage, utilities, car notes, and many other expenses, all of that stuff that goes into what we call adulting. People can appear very successful and very well adjusted on the outside. But emotionally, they are still children. They lack self-awareness. They lack accountability. They lack empathy, sympathy, and compassion for other human beings. They lack the ability to regulate their own emotions. And then they expect everyone around them to adapt to their dysfunction. Now, just imagine somebody behaving like that every single day in the workplace. Imagine a coworker who never accepted responsibility at work. Imagine a coworker who blamed everyone else for their mistakes. Imagine a coworker who started an argument every single time constructive feedback was given to them. How long do you think that person would last? Not very long at all. Yet, people tolerate these same behaviors in relationships for years, often for decades. Let's imagine, you walking into work tomorrow morning. We're going to go down hypothetical lane for a moment. For an entire week, you decided not to show up for work. You stopped answering all of your supervisor's emails. You stopped returning their phone calls and left them on red when they texted you. You ghosted all of your coworkers. Then, on Friday, you just casually showed back up in the office. And your excuse was, I just need some space. Can I get my check, please? How long do you think you would keep that job? Not very long at all. Yet, ghosting has become the new normal in relationships. Silent treatments have now become acceptable communication. Refusal to be vulnerable has become the new normal. Avoidance has now become conflict resolution. And somehow, we are all supposed to call all of these negative behaviors healthy. The new normal. Ooh, wait! Check it out. Imagine you were at your annual performance review. Check this out. Your supervisor says, close the door. We need to discuss a few issues, grievances, and concerns. Instead of you listening to your supervisor, you immediately respond. Why are you bringing this up now? Or, why are you talking to me like that? Or, you think I just can't do anything right? I can't do anything right in your eyes. Do you see, hear, and notice what just happened? The conversation became no longer about your job performance. The conversation had now shifted to being about your feelings regarding the conversation, instead of discussing the actual reason for the conversation. You see, the entire subject changed. I call that changing the channel. Like having a remote control and changing the channel of the television to totally different programming. You are trying to discuss one issue. The other person suddenly changes the conversation entirely. Now, you are defending yourself regarding something that had nothing to do with the problem, instead of both parties working to solve the original, the actual problem. Emotionally immature people often do this. Not because they're evil. On most occasions, it is because they simply haven't developed the emotional capacity to remain present during unpleasant and uncomfortable conversations, particularly when the conversation requires them to take accountability for something they said or did that hurt, offended, or negatively affected someone else. It's deep. So, instead of them working with you to solve the problem, the conversation gets redirected entirely. The issue disappears. And as a result, nothing ever gets resolved. The emotionally immature person hopes that the issue, grievance, and concern will simply get swept under the rug and be forgotten, which is not healthy at all for anyone. Now, let me spin the block and come back to this point. Let's think about the workplace again. Imagine every meeting ending like this. We never discussed that. Or, I never said that. Or, that's not what happened. Or, you just misunderstood what I said. Imagine coworkers constantly changing the facts of the meeting. Or the agenda of the meeting altogether. Changing the timelines. Changing the story. Changing the narrative. Ooh-wee! Would anything ever get accomplished in the meeting? Of course not. Yet, this is how relational turbulence develops in our relationships among us. Every difficult conversation becomes totally exhausting, draining, and downright disorienting. The facts become negotiable. Our memories become negotiable. And as a result, our reality becomes totally distorted. And eventually, you begin spending more energy trying to keep the conversation on track rather than actually trying to solve the problem. Then there are the mind games, what I coin those Jedi mind tricks. You wouldn't try to outsmart your supervisor in the workplace. You wouldn't try to manipulate your coworkers every day in the workplace. You wouldn't seek to intentionally create confusion in the middle of an important meeting. Why is that? Because you are actually there to accomplish something. You are there to meet goals and objectives of the company. You are actually there to get work done for the company. And to get that back at the end of the pay period. You are emotionally present. You remain fully engaged. You are sold out on doing everything in your power to resolve the issues, grievances, and concerns. Folks, all of our relationships deserve that same level of presence. Real effective communication requires two people willing to stay in the conversation, not one person talking while the other person keeps looking at their device, being all distracted, interrupting you, or talking over you, or treating what you have to say with complete apathy and indifference. That is not healthy communication, folks. That is checking out. That is shutting down. That is tuning someone out. That is avoidance. And ultimately, that is total disrespect. I have also learned that emotional immaturity often looks less like anger and more like avoidance. I have been introduced to the avoidant personalities on this individuation journey. The deflecting, the blame shifting, the denying, the changing the subject, the focusing on your tone instead of focusing on the message that you are trying to convey to them. The turning every discussion into another discussion until eventually nobody even remembers the original issue that was being discussed. It's deep. You're trying to discuss accountability. They're discussing your facial expressions. You're trying to discuss trust. They're discussing the timing in which you brought up the issue, grievance, and concern. You're trying to discuss honesty. They're bringing up something that happened 6 months ago that had nothing to do with what you all were talking about whatsoever. Changing the channel again. Ooh, wait. This is what happens in unhealthy communication, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Issues, grievances, and concerns get replaced by unrelated issues, grievances, and concerns. And as a result, nothing ever gets acknowledged. Nothing ever gets resolved. Nothing ever gets healed. Folks, as I was preparing for this video, I went back and started rereading a book that completely changed my life. A great mentor gave me this book when I was 30 years old. It's called The Road Less Traveled. In The Road Less Traveled, Scott Peck wrote something that perfectly describes what happens when we refuse to effectively deal with conflict. Quote, problems do not go away. They must be worked through, or else they remain forever a barrier to the growth and development of the spirit. That sentence, to this day, reading it again, stopped me in my tracks and hit my spirit. Because that is what, it is exactly what emotionally immature communication produces. The problems do not just disappear. They simply go underground. And whatever goes underground eventually resurfaces somewhere else in a very unhealthy way. People who are emotionally mature do not profess to be perfect. Let me say that again. People who are emotionally mature do not profess to be perfect. None of us are perfect. But maturity recognizes maturity. Emotionally mature people make mistakes. They forget things. They misunderstand stuff. But they stay in the conversation. They lean into the conflict instead of running away from conflict. They listen. They ask questions. They apologize. They repair. They work towards solutions. In a nutshell, they're able to take accountability. Emotionally immature people, well, they often struggle with that process. The conversations quietly shift from solving the problem to escaping the discomfort of having to solve the problem. One of the biggest lessons I have learned in my older age is this. And this is my anthem for 2026. I no longer try to rationalize with irrational people. I no longer try to reason with unreasonable people. I no longer go to every fight that I am invited to. Because my peace is valuable. My spiritual hygiene is valuable. Protecting my mental health is valuable. Every relationship should be evaluated by these 3 simple questions. Number 1, does this relationship improve my life, or does it make my life harder? Number 2, are we solving problems, or are we creating new ones? And number 3, are they bringing peace, or are they taking peace? Lastly, in closing, if this relationship were a workplace, hello, come on in. Let us sit down for your annual performance review. Let's see. Communication needs improvement. Accountability needs improvement. Teamwork needs improvement. Emotional presence needs improvement. Conflict resolution needs improvement. Accepting constructive feedback needs a great deal of improvement. Taking responsibility needs improvement. Overall performance, very unsatisfactory. Unfortunately, we're going to have to let you go. Here is the question I want to leave you with. After everything you have experienced, would they be eligible for rehire after you have fired them? Because not every relationship deserves unlimited opportunities. Not every person deserves unlimited access. Protecting your peace does not make you cold. Don't let those people gaslight you. It makes you responsible for your own emotional well-being. If we expected the same accountability in our relationships that we expect in the workplace, I honestly believe that many of us would have healthier relationships and maybe, just maybe, healthier lives. So, continue being the best version of yourself today, and then doing the work to get even better tomorrow. Feel, deal, heal, protect your peace. Like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment. Thank you so much for watching. This is GBIC Relationship University, the Relationship Problems channel, where we find relationship solutions and get better together. Be blessed, everyone.